morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name is Ross, and as always told out of Voice of Radio. So today, I figured we needed to take a little bit of a look at the best villain cards we've ever had in the Pokemon trading card game. Now, this was mooted to me by the lovely Legally Sarcastic, one of my supporters over at patreon.com/PTCGRadio. And as a quick reminder, you can get yourself weekly bonus podcasts over there, where you ask any question, and within reason, and I answer it. Or, like Legally Sarcastic has done, you can say, hey, Wassy, make a video, and I kind of have to, if you're on the right tier. So, with that borne in mind, I thought what we would do is go generation by generation, villain group by villain group, and take a look at the best cards. We're not trying to make a numbered list here, and we're being a little bit free and loose with the definitions, but it gives us an excuse to talk about some really nice, and in many cases, really evil cards. And we might as well start off in Generation 1 with Team Rocket and Giovanni. Although as a side note, they were also the bad guys in Gen 2. Don't worry too much about it. Now, obviously we need to start here because, well, firstly it's Gen 1, and secondly we've just had confirmation of an amazing new card. It's Boss's Orders. Now, it's actually just a reprint of Lysander that we'll get to in a moment, but essentially here it lets you drag one of your opponent's bench Pokemon into the active, and it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. It's one of the best supporters we will have as soon as it comes out, and it will remain one of the best supporters we've got until it rotates out, or something better is released, which is extremely unlikely. It is going to define the format. Now, another Team Rocket card that I really liked and thought was really good was Team Rocket's Handiwork. You see, Team Rocket's Handiwork was really good in milling decks. What it did was it let you flip 2 coins, and for each head you discarded 2 cards to the top of your opponent's deck. Bearing in mind we had stuff like Versus Seeker to reuse it, and we could always, play some kind of card that did a bit of recovery, even Puzzle of Time back in the day, to just reuse it over and over again. And it was at the heart of some really horrible milling decks. Double heads, milling 4 cards on the top of your opponent's deck. You could come back from that, but let's just say it was somewhat difficult to do. Now, the last Giovanni's card I want to shout out here, it feels like I'm cheating a little bit. It's Giovanni's Last Resort. Now, it feels like cheating, because it was really Giovanni as a gym leader rather than as the head of Team Rocket, but he's wearing a rocket jacket on it, so I'm totally counting it. What you did was you removed all damage counters from one of your Pokemon with Giovanni in its name, and then discarded your entire hand, which is quite a lot to ask, but given that Giovanni's Machamp had a redonk ability whereby if it would be KO'd, you flipped a coin, if heads, it wasn't knocked out, just went down to 10 HP remaining, combine that with Giovanni's Last Resort, and yeah, we're looking pretty good. Although, quick shout out to Giovanni, the holo card. Choose one of your Pokemon in play with Giovanni in its name. For the rest of your turn, you may evolve that Pokemon, even if you just played it or evolved it this turn, and you could keep going, so you could go Machop up to Machamp turn 1. Even in Giovanni's Machamp decks, it didn't see play, but it's cool, so I wanted to shout it out. But if we could, for a moment, focus on Team Rocket, in the early days of the game, Team Rocket had some ridiculous cards. We had Rocket's Admin, which made both players shuffle a hand into their deck and draw a number of cards equal to their remaining prizes. Rocket's Admin was nuts. It was one of the best comeback cards we've ever seen, and did come back a little bit later, more on that in a moment. But if we go back even further, we had the fairly ridiculous combo of Rocket's Sneak Attack and the Rocket's Trap, still a card name that drives me crazy. You see, the Rocket's Trap made you flip a coin, and if heads, you chose up to 3 cards at random from your opponent's hand, don't look at them, and they shuffled them back into their deck. Rocket Sneak Attack let you look at your opponent's hand, and if they had any trainer cards, you chose one of them and they shuffled it into their deck. But this was back in the day before supporter cards were a thing, so you would play the Rocket's Trap, maybe even a second one, hopefully flipping heads, and then Rocket Sneak Attack would get rid of the rest of their hand, and all of a sudden you'd be sitting there against an opponent who had a 0 card hand, and yeah, it got kind of annoying if I'm honest with you. Sorry. Moving into Gen 3, we had Team Aqua and Archie, and Team Magma and Maxi. Now, maybe I'm slightly biased given the whole having a son called Archie, but Archie's ace in the hole was so good. It just let you put a water Pokemon from your discard pile onto your bench and then draw 5 cards. Now, it had to be the final card in your hand, but at the time, even it expanded at the moment, time you start adding in stuff like Computer Search, Executor, Ultra Ball, Jirachi, etc., it really is not that difficult to actually pull off that combo. And it let you put any water Pokemon onto your bench, even if it wasn't a basic. So what you would do here is you would use it to get Blastoise that could accelerate as much energy as you like. It was such a good card, it actually won the World Championship, so yeah. Yeah, it was pretty gosh darned good. Now, Maxi's also pretty good. Maxi's ended up getting banned, because Maxi's did the same thing, except it was fighting Pokemon. And you had things like Archeops. And Archeops had an ability that stopped your opponent's and your own Pokemon from evolving, but you could go first and get it going turn 1 with Maxis. Now, at first we banned Archeops, but then we got Kabutops that could lock you out of supporters, and Omastar that could item lock you, and Pokemon went, yeah, Maxis is too good. We're going to have to go and ban it. Now, I do want to give a quick shout out to Team Magma's secret base here. Though Team Magma's hideout was extremely similar, it just let you put 2 damage counters on any basic Pokemon that wasn't a Team Magma Pokemon when they went down to the bench. Good for hurting your opponent, but it was actually really good for the Gyarados from Ancient Origins, which did damage dependent on each damage counter on each of your Magikarp, bearing in mind every Magikarp always has 30 HP. Yeah, this was kind of cool, ladies and gentlemen. This was cool. Team Aqua's secret base and Team Aqua's hideout long before it, they were alright. They just increased the retreat cost of non-Aqua Pokemon. Saw a bit of play here and there. Weren't amazing, weren't stunning, but did see a little bit of play and a little bit of love. I should mention that Archie and Maxi did get earlier cards which did pretty much the same thing, though you had to put damage counters on if they were a stage 2 Pokemon. But that's alright. Still kinda worked. Except it was only a Team Aqua / Team Magma Pokemon, and you got to search your deck for it, and it didn't have to be the last card in your hand, so yeah, that was still pretty gosh darn good. Moving into Gen 4, we got Cyrus and Team Galactic, and Cyrus alone had 2 phenomenal cards. We had Cyrus's Conspiracy and Cyrus's Initiative. Now, Initiative was the lesser played of the 2, but it was hand disruption. Cyrus's Initiative allowed you to flip 2 coins. If either of them is heads, you looked at your opponent's hand, and for each heads, you grabbed a card from their hand and put it on the bottom of their deck. It was played for a while with Sableye, and Sableye just let you, for 0 energy, search your deck for a supporter card and essentially use it while discarding it, so it was a really good disruption deck along those lines. Cyrus's Conspiracy, on the other hand, really was the engine that drove those SP decks, most of which focused around Garchomp and or Luxray. Let you search your deck for a supporter card, a basic energy, and a trainer card with Team Galactic's invention in its name, and put them into your hand. Well, the great news is that you could get an energy, a trainer, and a Cyrus for next turn. Bearing in mind, at the time we had cards like Uxie that meant we really weren't worrying about using supporters for draw. We had other ways to draw, so we were kind of fine. Then you had all of those ridiculous tricks like SP Radar that let you search out your SP Pokemon, like Energy Gain that reduced the energy cost of your SP Pokemon, like Poker Turn that let you just pick one up to either reuse an ability, I'm looking at you Crobat G, or just heal a Pokemon, and that's before we even mentioned Power Spray, one of the more hideous cards we've ever had released. As long as you had free SP Pokemon in play, you could just cancel one of your opponent's Poke Powers. They benched the Uxie, you played Power Spray, Uxie was still on their bench. They just weren't actually allowed to use it. They didn't get to use the ability. That was kind of upsetting. Now, to be fair, we did also have Team Galactic's Wager quite a bit earlier. It was an earlier kind of card. And Team Galactic's Wager came along. Each player shuffles his or her hand into his or her deck, and you play rock, paper, scissors. The winner gets 6 cards, the loser gets 3. We saw high-level players in high-level games at the high-level World Championships playing rock, paper, scissors to decide essentially who was going to have the card advantage and hence the advantage in the game. Moving into Gen 5, and it was all about N and Team Plasma, although, was it Getsis and Team Plasma? I'll let you decide that one. N was a phenomenal card. It was actually a reprint of that Rockets admin card we looked at earlier. Each player shovels his or her hand into his or her deck, and then draws a number of cards equal to their remaining prizes. And it was good. It was really good. Good players always seem to magically have an N at the perfect time, when in reality, they had played themselves into a position where they would always have it. Make no mistake, this was a card that rewarded really good players, but it also led to some rather redonkulous comebacks. But, you know, that's still pretty good, ladies and gentlemen. That's still pretty good. Now, if you were more of a Getsis fan, then you had Getsis. A card so good it went and got banned in the expanded format. You see, Getsis let you look at your opponent's hand, find any item cards, shuffle them into your opponent's deck, and then draw 1 card for each one shuffled back in. Yeah. If you played this turn 1 before your opponent had even had a turn, you could potentially lock them out of the entire game by leaving them with a hand. If they didn't have a supporter, you could potentially lock them into a hand which was garbage, and then they'd just end up losing the game. Hey-ho. And let's not forget one of the meanest combinations we've ever had, the combination of Hypnotoxic Laser and Verbank City Gym. You see, Hypnotoxic Laser was automatic poison, plus sleep if you flipped heads, and Verbank City Gym put 2 more damage counters on poison Pokemon between turns. Now, I know Verbank City Gym wasn't a Team Plasma card, but Hypnotoxic Laser was, so I'm totally counting it. This was a horrible combo that just absolutely wrecked. It was just extra damage, and we saw decks like Seismitoad just absolutely taking advantage of this, item locking you while leaving you poison, taking free damage counters between turns. If you haven't been there many times, you probably weren't playing very much back then. We could mention stuff like Chorus Machine that accelerated Plasma Energy and some of the other cool uses for Plasma Energy, but I don't think they were the biggest, bestest Team Plasma Pokemon cards. Moving into Generation 6, we had Lysander and we had Team Flare. Now, I've already mentioned Lysander. It's the same as Boss's Orders. It's nuts good. The only thing that stopped us playing Lysander was when Guzma came out, which was the same thing, but you also had to switch. They pretty much passed the baton in the standard format. In expanded, the choice is very much between the two of them. Depends how often you're going to want to switch. It's a kind of ridiculous card. Wasn't the only Lysander card we ever got, of course, because Lysander's trump card was so good it ended up getting banned, and it got banned quickly. Each player shuffled all of the cards in their discard pile into their deck, except for Lysander's trump card. Except at the time we had Versus Seeker. So you didn't need to shuffle it back into your deck because you shuffled all your Versus Seeker back in, and then you could Versus Seeker to get it straight back out again. Oh yeah, no, that actually worked really quite well. It was a disgusting, broken combo. It led to Seismitoad being a completely broken deck. It meant you could play flippy cards like Super Scoop Up and Crushing Hammer, as well as Hypnotoxic Laser, but you could play them constantly, so every turn you would heal up and remove your opponent's energy and leave them asleep and poisoned, and it was just ridiculous. It ruined the UK National Championships in 2015. It got banned before the US National Championships because it definitely would have ruined them as well. Now, Team Flare Grunt shouldn't be slept on. That just discarded energy from your opponent's active. Good card, decent, energy denial, saw a fair amount of play. I do need to give a shout out to Headringer and Jamming Net, which were very unusual cards because they had, well, firstly, they were all weird and red bordered, but secondly, they were tools that you played onto your opponent's Pokemon. Headringer increased the cost of an attack by 1 colourless energy. These could only be put onto EXs. And Jamming Net meant they did 20 less damage. Headringer saw a lot more play, but Jamming Net did jump in here and there. Really nice or annoying cards, depending how you looked at it. And even though it didn't really feel like a Team Flare card, we've got to give a shout out here to Battle Compressor. It was technically a Team Flare card. You search your deck for 3 cards and discard them. This was good in Flareon decks for discarding cards that were Pokemon. It was good in Night March decks for discarding Night Marchers. It was good in Fire decks for discarding Fire Energy so you could use Blacksmith. It was nuts in so many different decks. Still is in the expanded format, incidentally. Oh, and RoboSub was kind of cool. Put it in the active, don't give up a prize. Yay! And then finally, Generation 7 brought us Guzma and Team Skull. Now, Guzma was awesome. Guzma, like we said, was just Lysander. We often see gusting effects on the bad guys. At least we do nowadays. And that was cool. And to be fair, we did get Boss's Orders Giovanni. There is every possibility that in the future we get a Boss's Orders Guzma. And it was a switch as well, but it was a gusting card, and it basically came in as Lysander rotated out, and that made it a pretty gosh darn phenomenal card. And if anyone's thinking, well, hang on a second, other than kind of Archie and Maxie, it does seem like we're really looking Diamond and Pearl on for most of the good bad guy cards. Yes, sorry. Now, to be fair, Team Rocket had some doozies. We already talked about them. The point is, Guzma was good, as is Guzma and Hala, legal in the format at the moment. Really good in the format at the moment. Lets you search a stadium, a tool, and a special energy, the best one of which, of course, being special energy, given how difficult that generally is to search out. Go Guzma and Hala. We could mention Team Skull Grunt, which got energy out of your hand and did see a little bit of play, but it didn't exactly set the world on fire. We could mention Plumeria, which discarded an energy from anywhere on your opponent's field, which was really nice, but did ask you to discard 2 cards from your hand in order to do so. Honestly, outside of Guzma, Team Skull didn't see much representation. And then we get to Generation 8 with Team Yell, and we're basically looking Team Yell Grunt, maybe. It's not a particularly good card. One would imagine that at some point in the not-too-distant future, we're going to get a Chairman Rose card. Slight spoilers for the game. And Chairman Rose, it's been out a long time at this stage, to be fair. And Chairman Rose might be a really good card. We'll have to wait and see, I suppose. We'll have to wait and see. And there you go, ladies and gentlemen. That's a brief history of the villain cards in the Pokemon TCG. And look at the best villain cards. I was not aiming to look at every single villain card we'd ever had. I was aiming to show you a lot of the best ones, and I think I've done that today. But if there's any I should have mentioned but didn't, if there's any that you're feeling a little bit mad at me for not shouting out, well, good news. There's a comment section, so go nuts. Be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWazzy, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that good stuff, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, or you can do exactly that. And please do make sure you're checking out youtube.com/WazzyPlays, where you can find out about a whole bunch of games that don't have Pokemon in, but are pretty gosh darned awesome nonetheless. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.